What's good on YouTube? This is Crazy Sarah, so I want to bring another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Power Rangers Ninja Steel Episode 5. The other day, Episode 5 released, and I wanted to do a review of it then. Of course, as many people may know, I do not have a TV readily available to me that would allow me to show it the day of, and it's just not very easy due to the fact that I am in college, and that's just not how it works. But I will be able to do it for Episode 7 and 8 since I will be home for those. Anyway, what ends up happening from there, what I want to say is Episode 5, Drive to Survive is what it's called. What ends up happening in the episode is it's all about Calvin. This is Calvin's focus episode, and it's a cool episode, and it's an episode that kind of gave me a lot of really good feels for his character. And I originally was putting it as though it were Haley as my favorite for the season, then Preston, then Calvin. Calvin's probably higher than Preston now, but still lower than Haley because I just can't not love Haley. And her focus episode hasn't even happened yet, which I'm looking forward to next week. So that will be really cool. But anyway, I wanted to go over this episode because it was cool. What ends up happening in this episode is that Calvin ends up building a bike, and he ends up showing it to the rest of the team. Sarah wants to ride it after he rides it, after he tests it out and everything. But the thing is that Calvin ends up suggesting that she maybe ride it first. And the thing is that she's like, no, why don't you ride it? You made it. And the thing is that he's like, yeah, he ends up having to explain to them a really important fact about him. He doesn't know how to drive. He's never driven his truck or anything before, and he explains how this could be. First of all, Haley has been chauffeuring him this whole entire time inside of his truck. He's never actually ridden it. The other thing to keep in mind is the fact that when he was a child, he was in a go-kart and he ended up derailing and falling into a pond, and ever since then he's never gone back to driving. So that's prevented him from doing anything he's wanted to do as far as riding vehicles, even though he's all about vehicles. So what ends up happening is that Sarah says that she'll teach him, but also Brody wants to learn how to ride a motorcycle as well. So Sarah's gonna teach both of them how to do it. What happens is we end up seeing the villains talking, and we see the new monster for the episode, Tangleweb, talking to Cosmo, who has something in his stomach, and he ends up shooting it out. It turns out the monster Tangleweb had swallowed a Kudabot, and which was their basic foot soldier, and that's what he's going to use to capture the Rangers, because he can just suck them in and then toss them out if he needs to. So what ends up happening is that then we end up seeing Victor and Monty are scheming to get out of class early by chewing on by eating a whole bunch of beans so that they'll be really gassy, and then they'll make the class end early because they'll just constantly fart. So what happens is that they start eating all these beans. But suddenly, the monster for the episode, he wants to sneak in and try to find the Rangers and everything, so he has to get really small, like a very small spider, even though he's big in reality. And he ends up getting big when Victor tries to crush the spider because Monty sees the spider, and so Victor tries to crush it, but Tangleweb ends up actually throwing Victor in his small size on the ground, gets big, and then ties them into webs. Suddenly what happens is that he ends up both Monty and Victor end up farting continuously, and it makes the web larger and larger and larger, so it constantly is just expanding. Eventually what happens is that they end up actually flying into the air, but then we end up seeing the Rangers part of this information, and we end up seeing that they have been trying to they're trying to teach Calvin and Brody how to ride motorbikes and all that. So in Brody's case, he ends up going on the motorbike, has no issue at all, ends up learning real fast, ends up doing amazing tricks, stunts, you name it, awesome. Calvin, on the other hand, they put on a smaller bike just because they want to make sure that he's okay and start small and then get bigger. Doesn't really do very well. He ends up crashing into several things and causing a lot of trouble for himself, and eventually tries to wash up and get cleaned up or whatever. So then what happens is we end up seeing the monster Tangleweb, and in this case he's in the small form, and the Rangers end up seeing him. Preston specifically notices him on the ground. It's like, oh, you don't want to get hurt, little bug. Suddenly the monster grows big, and then we see the preview clip, which we had seen already, which was this clip where the spider ends up sucking them into a vortex. Calvin, Haley, and not Calvin, sorry. Haley, Sarah, and Preston are sucked in. Then Tyler sees that they were sucked in, tries to attack Tangleweb, ends up being sucked in as well, and calls out to Calvin saying, save us. Calvin's just coming out at that time, sees them, and then has to return back to where Mick and Redbot are. They apparently have been working on forging new ninja stars. New Ninja Steel stars or whatever, and they end up creating a brand new one, which the way that they are able to do it is that they have to throw it into the prism, and what happens is that they throw them into the Ninja Steel prism or whatever, and when they do that, it comes back at them, shoots right at them, they grab onto it, and so then at that point they end up seeing in the Ninja Steel prism or whatever a image of Calvin's bike, which was also sucked into the spider. That basically is trying to tell Calvin that he should drive the bike and maybe he'll be able to save his friends. So at that point he doesn't have the confidence, but Mick tries to give him some confidence and reassure him that he should do it, and the only one that's going to be able to do it is him. So at that point he ends up taking that confidence, goes to confront Tangleweb, ends up being sucked right back in there, and rather than being spiderweb food, he is all good. He has his blade out, so he's able to cut through it and doesn't affect him, and suddenly he ends up going over to his bike, places the ninja star on top of the bike. The bike transforms into a specialized bike that matches the show, the Ninja Steel Rangers look and all that, and he ends up using it to ride on out. At that point, because he rode on out of the monster, the others end up being shot out and freed as well. At that point, when they're freed, they all end up fighting the monster and using their elemental stars, like their water star, to use mist and then attack them and use surprise attacks and then use the bikes a bunch, and they use the final attack, and eventually they defeat Tangleweb. But then he grows big, so then at that point we end up seeing that Mick is creating another ninja star. This time it is for a Zord. It is for the Tusk Zord. So what happens is that while they're trying to fight Tangleweb, which is who he's using lots of spider webs to kind of slow them down and stop them in their tracks, this monster comes out and barrels through the monster. Suddenly they end up using the Tusk Megazord, which is the combination of the Ninja Steel Megazord and the Tusk Zord, to come together, and they end up defeating Tangleweb. Then we end up seeing that Victor and Monty are still flying through the air, and they end up hitting a flagpole, and the spider web ends up bursting, and suddenly it goes off like a balloon, flying all around aimlessly. On the other hand, we end up seeing the Rangers, who are congratulating Calvin because he actually passes his driver's test with a perfect score and does super well, and now he's able to drive and become Haley's chauffeur, which is something that they point out. As far as the villain side of the story, basically Ripcon is punished having to clean all the bathrooms across the ship that Galvanox has, and that's basically it. Overall, really cool episode. I enjoyed it a lot. I know I didn't give every single detail to this, but I gave you guys more or less so what's the key elements of the episode. And I'll tell you this much right now, I personally enjoyed it a lot. I think it was a lot of fun. I like Calvin's character a lot more. I like the fact that he did have this difficulty because, making it so that he just knew how to drive and everything, that's cool, but making it so that he had to gain that ability, that adds a lot more to his character, and it really says a lot about who he is. And now it shows, okay, I'm not just representing the idea of a driver, I am one now, and that's kind of special, and that kind of shows, him showing that he can get past his fears and his struggles and learn a new skill, which is great. It's a great moral lesson episode, more or less so. If you like episodes like that where there's a really good moral lesson and there's a good showing of strengths and weaknesses occurring between lead characters, this is a great episode and you should watch this. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I love to know your guys' opinions below. Did you like this episode? Leave your comments below, and check out my Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Sarah 71, and goodbye, guys.